Hi, Melissa. It's really good to see you here today.
I'm so glad you were willing to meet with me because I'm nervous about how my son's learning to read, and I wrote some questions down, so
Awesome.
I'm really glad. I guess I'm wondering why reading out loud is so important. Reading out loud to children.
Well, it is the most important thing to do with your child is to read out loud with them, and some reasons for that is that it really builds your child's background knowledge. They learn language through listening to stories, and they learn about experiences and people and places, and it builds rich background knowledge for them, and it teaches them vocabulary that once they've heard the vocabulary, then it becomes easier for them to read. When they start to read, then they've heard the vocabulary words before, so it's familiar to them. And it gives them rich language patterns because when we talk, we don't necessarily use the language that we hear from a book. And we hear full sentences and descriptive words, and so it builds the child's vocabulary also. The other reason is it's fun, and kids love being read to, and it's a special close time, and it helps children become familiar with the story structure, the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. So there's many reasons why reading out loud with your child is so important, and it is it is in research it's shown that it is the best predictor of learning to read.
If kids have been read to out loud.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So I know you've been teaching a while in the classroom, and I know I've only come in and visited a few times, but what's the best approach to teaching reading in the classroom?
There are several different things that you can be looking for in your classroom. What we have 5 components that we're teaching to for reading. The first component is phonemic awareness. You have to teach the sounds. Phonemic awareness is the sounds that the letters make, the sounds that words make, rhyming, blending and segmenting words. It's all, phonemic awareness is teaching the sounds. So your child, as your young child, you can begin playing those rhyming games, listening to nursery rhymes, and teaching that phonemic awareness skill. And that's what should happen in kindergarten through first grade. And then the second component is phonics. So then you're looking at letter knowledge, having them actually be able to recognize their letters and know the shapes that letters make and the sounds that letters make. As they progress through kindergarten to first grade, you're actually looking at letter patterns, teaching them to look at the patterns that are in the letters. You teach them the sight words and spelling. All comes to play underneath phonics, and your phonics has to be systematic and explicit. So in your child's classroom, you're going to make sure that they're being taught phonics explicitly. We had a movement a few years ago called whole language, where phonics was not taught, and now
in the education
world, and it's come back around that we need to explicitly teach phonic skills. So that's a second component. The third component that's huge is vocabulary, and so you want to be sure that your child is being instructed explicitly and systematically in vocabulary. There's lots of read-alouds, there's a lot of shared readings, interactive writing and writing will all help with building vocabulary knowledge.
So writing actually helps with reading.
Exactly. Yes. And they've found that to learn vocabulary, that the majority of new words that you learn are through reading. So once your child, even as your child begins to learn to read, they will learn more and more vocabulary through reading than they will through just spoken language. Fluency and comprehension are the next two components. And fluency means that once kids get to past the beginning reading stage, that they actually can read fluently and they can read quickly, and it's an automatic thing. And that starts about second grade, where you really begin to have children build their fluency up. It can, in earlier grades, like in kindergarten, it can be letter fluency. So making sure your child knows their letters fluently, quickly, automatically. So that's why it's important to start early on with teaching letters and singing that alphabet song and practicing with magnet letters on your refrigerator. And then comprehension strategies. We actually teach comprehension strategies to children so that they are able to understand what they're reading. And that comes a little later after they have the beginning reading down. So those are the 5 components that you want to look for in your child's classroom and talk to your teacher about to make sure that that's happening.
So I guess I'm a little confused about, is it difficult to learn to read? Is it easy? I mean, should it be the same for all kids?
Reading is a very difficult skill. We naturally, as human beings, we are wired, our brains are wired to learn the language, to learn oral spoken language. But to learn to read is one of the most difficult skills that the brain has to do, because they're translating that visual symbol into oral language. And it is a very difficult skill, and I think as adults we forget that because it's become automatic. But for children, it takes a long time to learn to read, and it is difficult. And so and every child learns differently. And so for some children it's easier, and than others it's more difficult.
Do you have advice for parents on what they can do to help their child get ready to read? Like, I don't know, I'm wondering if I did everything I needed to do before I sent my son to school.
Some suggestions for you are, again, read aloud. Build your child's vocabulary. Model vocabulary by reading books. And so I can't stress that enough. Have a time in your day, a structured time in your day where you read with your child. Regular routine seems to really support children. Make it a comfortable, cozy spot.
So bedtime's okay.
Bedtime's perfect. But, looking for the porch swing out on the sunny afternoon outside is a great idea too. Put it in your schedule where it works, and find a cozy place to read with your children. And if you need to, build in incentives. If your child doesn't want to read, or build an incentive program in for reading. And as they get older, they can spend time reading to you, and that you continue to read to them. Play a word game a day, especially for preschoolers. Rhyming games, nursery rhymes. Look for words in the environment, stop signs, signs in the environment, grocery stores. Look for print and point it out to your child. Practice reading as they begin to read simple books. Practice, practice, practice. Again, let them read for a few minutes and then you read to them. Sound out words with your children. Have them focus on the letters. Point out patterns in letters, like family word patterns like rat, cat, fat, sad.
Okay.
Point those things out to your child. And if you notice that your child isn't rhyming or is having difficulty learning those letters, don't wait. Ask your teacher about it. If you feel there's that they're not learning them as quickly as you think they should, or you've noticed another child of yours has, bring it up to your teacher and ask questions. Ask what are some things that you can do. What are some specific things that you can do to help your child?
So you've been talking a lot about language. How can I help develop my child's language?
Oral language is so important to develop, and so when you're talking with your child, I suggest open-ended questions. So, for example, when you've read a story, you say, "What is your favorite part of the story?" Or your child is talking about their day, what happened at kindergarten. You say, "Tell me more about that." Use describing words, words that can really describe it, the event, and model it for them. Show them, take their sentences that they give you and lengthen them, add descriptive words to it, so that you're building their vocabulary and rephrasing their sentences so that they hear the language and use the language. I always tell this story. My husband would always put my son to bed with a story. We'd read to them. We'd have read time, but then when they'd go to actually get in the bed, he would share personal stories, and that's a connection they have.
Like telling an oral story.
Yeah, they have 16 years now. My 16-year-old will say, "Hey, Dad, remember that story about Jimmy and Bobby from his childhood?" And so he still remembers the stories that my husband told him. So share personal stories and talk about what you've done during the day. Have family meal times where you have sharing time to talk about what happened during the day and expand on the vocabulary there. Find time to talk in the car, when you're grocery shopping, during your daily activities. Make time to talk with your children and expand their vocabulary.
So
drying in sand, drying in shaving cream, those things help them solidify what those shapes look like. Make letters with Play-Doh. And then, so you've sung the song, you've done the actual shape of the letter, and then you talk about the sounds. Children seem to learn in that order. They recognize what the letter is, they name it, and then the next step is to start practicing what the sound of that letter is. So print awareness, learning the alphabet, and then all that phonemic awareness activities that I talked about. Rhyming,
right.
Words start with a beginning sound, they have an ending sound. As they get older, in first grade, they'll hear the vowel sound more. Just playing with the sounds that the letters make.